Hi, I am Reese. Do I just say whatever I want to introduce myself? This is awful.
Introduce myself? Okay, sure. I'm Devin. Okay. I guess I always start with like where I'm from.
Hey, I'm Aiden, and I don't know. I'm here now, I guess. My character better be mad sexy.
I'm Kai. I'm a sophomore. Got trauma. So I'm here.
My name is Jia. I was born and raised in China, and I came here for college as an international student.
I really just like art. I like making things. You know, as someone who has like a mental illness, I always feel like my emotions are really strong and really like amplified. And so that's why I chose to do art, because it's sort of like, whoa, what else am I supposed to do with all these amplified emotions? I feel like I've been given them for a reason. And for me, at least, that reason is to create something.
I thrive in a high-paced environment. I really liked running myself dry, and I really liked the 10 to midnight rehearsals every night and the performing every week. I feel like that was where I grew the most.
I love my family and my friends. Usually I consider myself an introvert, but I realized how much I miss and I love people. Just like little interactions with them, even if it's just like a hi, bye kind of thing. I think people are social animals, right? So I realized I really love little interactions. Like how much just like a phone call can brighten my day. Kind of disgusting.
I love a lot of things, I guess. I love music. I'm a big music fan. Food. I really want to get into painting. Not very good at it yet, though. I like records. Geez, I don't know. It's like I'm always asked this question, and it's like I don't even know who I am. It's like trying to describe someone I've never met.
I love nature and being outside when it rains. I like the smell of books. Oh, it sounds like I'm writing myself as a YA fiction character.
I love playing devil's advocate, but that's so gross. Don't make me the antagonist, please. I'm the main character. I feel like everyone sort of just had like a psychotic breakdown back in March.
I raw dogged life. No meds, no therapist, just vibes.
I had a really tough year in like 2019, 2020. My first semester was one of the hardest times of my life, genuinely. I know that sounds super cheesy, but yeah, it was hard.
I felt really lost, didn't know who I was, didn't know who I should be, where I should fit in, who I could trust.
Coming into second semester, I had finally found the people at USC that I really cared about, you know, and I don't know, it started to feel like a little family. I mean, they were what really made me feel like I could just keep going, you know, like I belonged here and I deserved to be here. So to have all of that come to an end early was really difficult because I think I'd become a little codependent on the people in my life, which I know isn't good. But I don't know, it was nice. I mean, we spent every day together. So to go from that to complete isolation was hard.
I was definitely in a pretty bad place because like we obviously got sent home for school and stuff. I didn't really feel like I had a home. You know what I mean? And I studied abroad my freshman fall and came back to USC in the spring and then got sent back home. So I was just very uprooted.
I feel like early quarantine was not the time to love myself, you know, that was sort of a pick apart every single feature of my entire being and compare it to other people. because I didn't really have anything else to do. I was so bored that I just wanted to completely change my appearance. I did constant shopping. It was bad.
I ate a lot of salty foods. The big thing I remember from that time was eating a lot of like olives, canned mackerel, and canned fish. And I'm looking at myself like, why am I craving salty foods all the time? And I looked it up, and WebMD told me that people crave salt when they're under stress. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. That checks out. So I ate a bunch of cans of fish.
I had this big party in my dorm room on the last night before everyone started flying home because it felt apocalyptic, and I mean, we didn't know what coronavirus was going to do. So we had this end of the world party, and I squeezed as many people into my dorm room as possible, which isn't great in retrospect, knowing how the virus spreads. So I'm really glad nothing bad came out of that. It could have been awful. But we didn't know any better. Or we did, and we were purposely ignorant. I don't know, but we all squeezed into my dorm room, and it was bittersweet and great, and it was a lovely celebration.
I think it's hard to remember all the good things when you can't go outside your apartment. This sounds so dramatic, but like the monotony is a lot more boring, and not boring as in like yawn, I'm bored. Boring as in like it bores into you. Boredom of being like if there's less of a reason to get out of bed in the morning, you're not going to get out of bed. That sounds like depression, but that's not what that was.
I think it's gonna be one of those things like if our parents did coke. You know, it's gonna be like veiled for a lot of our life. You know, oh, mommy stayed inside and she wore a mask the entire time. But it's really like, no. No, mommy was halfway through this giant liter of Kendall Jackson wine, and she definitely fumbled over what she should have ethically done in the pandemic.
So in January and February, I read the New York Times every day. And in the very, very bottom of the daily briefing, they would be like, hey, there's a virus in Wuhan. And then the next week they would be like, hey, the virus in Wuhan has traveled to another country. And then I would watch as the cases get higher and higher and higher in China. And the moment it reached the United States, my brain would go haywire. I was like, oh my God, the world is actually ending. And I would hyperventilate for like a solid hour or two, just panic attack levels of being overwhelmed. And I mean, you know, I was thought of as crazy for having these thoughts. I remember people would tell me, they would be like, oh, it's okay, the world is not ending. And true, the world has not ended yet. But a lot of the things I was very afraid of very early on were true. And you know, I felt like a prophet. After we were all secluded and we couldn't return to campus, I had a friend who told me, they went, Reese, you are a fucking prophet. You saw the future.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I was going to classes, but I was like doing nothing, and I was just in bed, not knowing what to do. It got to the point where I would like not leave my bed.
I cried a lot, and I don't normally cry, so I think it's kind of different for me. There was this one time I was driving my car and I started bawling because I was listening to music, and I was like, Reese, get your shit together. Like, if you cry, you can't see the fucking road ahead of you. That's not it. And you know, before this year, I never really thought about seeing a therapist. I really didn't think I needed one because, you know, I'd sort of invalidate my feelings and be like, oh, well, I have it better than others, so I shouldn't be sad. And my parents would try to do that too, to put things into perspective. I don't know, it's like, I don't feel shitty enough to justify taking up mental health resources.
And I think what's been really hard about quarantine and the pandemic is if you're in close quarters with everyone, you're comparing your situation to everyone else's. So it's either this heightened sense of I have it worse or I have it better.
I very quantitatively analyze the definition of depression like a series of check boxes. So it's like, a change in nutrition, not wanting to exercise, a difficulty getting out of bed. Difficulty getting out of bed is the one where it's like either your foot is broken or you're depressed. That's the binary. And so when it was every day that I didn't want to get out of bed, I was like, this is depression. But I didn't think I had clinically diagnosable depression, so I probably shouldn't trivialize that word.
The pandemic actually led me into going back into therapy and back on medication, and just back to things I probably should have never left.
Here's what happened. I was around the kitchen table and two of my friends screamed at me to go see a therapist, even though I said to them, like, yeah, maybe I'm thinking about going, because they've gained a lot from therapy, which I respect and appreciate, but they think it's like a must and a necessity, and everybody should be in it all the time. And so we're around the kitchen table, and it's basically like I'm in one of those old torture movies where they have to have your eyes pulled open. Oh my god, and they're going through slowly, like, what do you want to prioritize? And they're saying shit like, do you want to prioritize the spirituality or the sexuality or the gender, blah, 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 until I just went, this therapist looks fine, and I booked it. It's funny, because the thing that ultimately translated my talk into action was, I mean, it was these two friends encouraging me to go, but they said, you only have to go to 2 sessions, and then the first one said, I will pay for your dinner after the first session. And then the second one said, I'll pay for your dinner after the second session. And I ordered sugarfish one night, and it was great. Yeah, so that's why I started going to therapy.
My sister noticed that I wasn't doing well, and she was like, Jan needs help. So that's actually how I started therapy. Because when I first mentioned I wanted therapy to my mom, she was like, no, I don't think you need it. I think it's just a pandemic. I think you are just in a weird place. But like I said before, my sister noticed that I was in a really bad place and would not get out of bed and suggested therapy to my mom. That's when my mom was like, okay, maybe she's doing really bad. So that's how I started therapy.
I think there's like no reason not to go to therapy because, like, A, I have the time, and B, like, life kind of sucked. You know, and I mean, it was nice to talk about how life just kind of sucked.
And so I'm talking to this therapist, and I'm telling her how I'm doing and how I'm not really feeling present, and how I dread going outside of my room every day. And by the end of the session, she's like, I think you're mildly depressed. And I was like, yeah, I agree. It's good to have it validated. It's very different once it's validated.
I felt really lonely because I don't have anyone to echo my problems. I don't have anyone who lives a similar lifestyle that I can like mirror off of. My family can't really understand why I'm the way I am, and they kind of misunderstood me. They kind of misunderstood my questions and my attempt at trying to communicate with them. So, yeah, I mean, this year I really talked to myself a lot.
I started becoming codependent on this girl I met on Bumble, and I fell in love, and that went wrong. I literally met Emily by agreeing to go to the beach one night, and she was this girl on Bumble who was just like, yeah, I don't think I have COVID.
I think everyone was incredibly horny back in March. You know, like March, April, May, that whole time period, because I wanted to fuck so bad. I read the New York City guidelines on sex during COVID, and it was like, oh my god, it was like, wear a mask and don't use your mouth in any way. And it was like, that fucking sucks, that's terrible. Jerking off would be better.
I hopped onto a dating app because I thought it would like make me happier, boost my ego or whatever, but Somehow, all the people saw through my profile page and they saw my insecurities because I did not match with anyone. And that, that made my confidence just like totally tank.
I've had a few romantic forays since the beginning of the pandemic, which have also all ended disastrously. Not disastrously per se. No, I would say they've all ended disastrously.
Our brains, we need people. Our brains need that physical contact. And so when our only moments of companionship are coming through things like phone calls or seeing each other like 6 feet away, I feel like some part of us doesn't really even register that as human.
Things with her were really special. I don't know, I mean, maybe she didn't think so, but it did. It felt special to me. We would just lay in bed together for hours, just talking for hours. And I had never experienced that with a girl before. Just feeling so comfortable. And not just like the physical attraction, but it was like I could see my spirit entwine with her. And I never thought I was worthy of someone as great as she is. And I never thought anyone would fall in love with me. Sorry, stuff with M is still really hard to talk about.
So right before I started USC, which was my freshman year, I began this sort of, it wasn't exactly a diet plan, just kind of like a guideline on how to eat better. And I lost a lot of weight, and like right before I started the year. And I felt really good about myself. I felt great about myself actually, because that was the first time in a really long time where I felt like I was worthy of being seen and worthy of being heard. Because I knew that I looked the way that I wanted to, you know?
It took a really long time to get over. And for a while I still had this hickey on my neck. So, you know, every time I looked in the mirror, I saw it. And she left me a huge one too. So I was like, that's fucked, dude. You know, I was so depressed in all of my classes that I got 2 different emails within 24 hours from 2 different professors with the subject line, checking in, little, you know, smiley face emoticon next to it. And I was like, am I really so depressed? In all of my classes, that 2 different professors felt the need to send a checking in email? And the answer is yes, with the exact same subject line.
So, as one with an anxious mind does, you fill your head with obsessive thoughts. And that was hard. I mean, obsessive, negative thoughts about my future, about my relationships, about my body image.
So my body's always been, I have an interesting relationship with it. When I was younger, I was super pudgy. My sister and I, we always make these jokes. It's like, why did our mom let us out of the house? Like, we were seriously chubby children. I think I've always just been a little bit obsessed with how I look. So fixation is really easy. Plus, food just like really stresses me out. Keeping a healthy diet over quarantine was really difficult for me. My body was hungry, but my mind had no appetite. Everything just sounded nauseating to me. And you know, like, at that point, you're I don't know, you're looking at all this food that you have, and it's like, you don't want the fucking bell peppers or the hummus in your fridge. You want, like, I don't know, like a burger from McDonald's or a large fry. So I would just eat crap.
the end of the relationship really hurt me. So I was just like, I went to my roommates and I was like, life sucks. Let's just party all the time. God, and we started doing so many drugs in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, we were doing psychedelics all the time. We did coke in the living room. There was one night where we smoked weed, we took shots, we smoked cigarettes, snorted coke, and then dropped acid at midnight. And it was like my brain was just breaking all the time. And I was upset and depressed, but I was just like, party it up. The world is ending, so it doesn't even matter.
I realized that I was taking so much of that so seriously. So I went to a psychiatrist and I talked to them about it. And they essentially told me I have an eating disorder. And so, coming into quarantine, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my body. I don't want to get rid of this really nice and skinny body that I have. And I haven't weighed myself since like the beginning of quarantine because I am very afraid because I have gained probably all of the weight back. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more. I don't really want to know. I know that I've gained the weight back. I can see it. It's like on my face and my fingers and just everywhere. I loved the way that I looked when I was like super skinny. But that was so unhealthy. It's like, am I ever going to love anything that's heavier than that? It's a scary relationship to have with yourself.
But then there was one night where I was on acid at USC, and I think my brain had too many drugs in it and too much sadness that I would just keep in me all the time. And I got so depressed while I was on acid. So when I was sober again, I was just like, I can't live like this. I mean, what am I doing? So I booked a plane ticket back home that night. And I left that night. I didn't even tell my roommates, because I'm not fucking crazy. And I went home. And I stayed there until school started again because it was all just way too much to deal with.
I feel like my eating disorder was mostly present in our movement class on Zoom. Where we had to show our bodies because we were all moving and everything. And I mean, these kids, they're skinny and they're pretty and they're photogenic. And I'm over here wearing the only set of PJs that fit me anymore and a t-shirt. And all I'm doing is comparing my body to theirs. And it makes me really anxious, like I'm doing something wrong. Even though all I'm doing is feeding myself. And I'm just trying to get through the day,
There are moments in life when you feel like your only option is to say yes. Not out of any form of duress or anything, but your heart is just like, you have to do this. Which is weird because it's not something I usually would have done. But this girl was special. So my head was just like, you gotta do this.
As an artist, seeing all these people doing these things in quarantine, I was excited for them. But it's hard to be happy for them, with that little voice in your head going, well, what are you doing? You're not really doing anything.
When things were dark, Instagram was a really bad place for me because, I mean, you're just looking at all these people who are living the life that you want. And you know, that creates two issues. It makes you feel insecure, and that your achievements are small, and it also makes you try to mimic these people that you just think look cool.
It's hard when you see the people who are like, my COVID glow up, I lost 50 pounds and all I did was this Chloe Ting workout 4 times a day.
Me and my friends are huge anti-capitalists now. I mean, I would sooner die than live in a picket fence house. Like, no, we are gonna live in a commune. It's gonna be like 10 adults, 4 kids. We're gonna raise them communally, you know?
It's one thing to be part of the LGBTQ community and to know that the AIDS crisis has happened, and to know that those people, specifically gay men, were ignored, you know? They might as well have been purposely shot by fucking Ronald Reagan. And so now to be living in a situation where it's like, I'm sorry, I as a bi man, I felt I was distanced from the AIDS crisis. But now to be living in a scenario where Trump just actively didn't get enough vaccines because he's a fucking idiot, or he just wants people to die. I don't know. I literally have no idea.
Everyone's like, oh, 2020 sucks. No, all these systems culminated in 2020. We can't reduce it to a year, and we can't reduce it to either candidate, and we certainly can't be like, oh, thank God Trump is out. The system that got him in the first place isn't out. I was, left-leaning, liberal before, but I'm just a fucking communist now. I'm just finding the language to align with the things that I've always thought.
I'm a very free spirit. I feel like I have a pretty anti-establishment sort of mindset. I think like during the pandemic, like all of us were looking at these institutions and criticizing them, especially over the summer. And I think in general, just the pandemic made us reflect on the bullshit that happens in America, and I don't intend to like I don't mean to be, and we'll see, who the fuck knows, but I'm trying to move out of the country after graduation, ideally.
I'm also a political science student, studying American politics, helping American communities, which makes me have like a fucking racial identity crisis all the time, because I always think to myself, like, I could be doing the same thing in China, helping, like, quote unquote, my people. So that's something I always have to deal with. And when Trump announced that international students had to go back, I was like, well, I put in all this work for you guys, and you are just kicking me out like that. So that made me have like an identity crisis again, which, yeah, made me spiral.
I've been really lonely, and my anxiety will tell me, oh, all your friends hate you. But I am depressed, and all of my friends are depressed. It's sort of like that birds of a feather kind of thing. All my friends are not reaching out because they're all just fucking depressed. So I think they hate me, but yeah, they're just depressed.
I can count on my friends in one hand, and I can't really connect with the 2 people I lived with because they are closer to each other. They are both born and raised here in America, both white. They always talk about their mutual friends. They always talk about like Disney Channel shows and like the references that they grew up with. And I know nothing about it. So a lot of times it feels like no matter how hard I try, they can't understand my problems. They will just consider it as like an international student problem, almost. And they are sympathetic towards it. They do show a lot of empathy to me. But, it feels like they just feel bad for me. And they don't understand why I try so hard. Sometimes they even took that as an offense. Like, Oh, it's my way of making them feel bad about themselves. Because I try really hard. I try really hard because the only thing I can do is try really hard and be productive. I don't have the privilege of not being kicked out of the country. Like, I have to have a place to go after I graduate. And that's something they are never going to understand. They're like, yeah, America sucks. I'm gonna leave America. Who wants to be here? And I'm like, I don't want to be here either. But I have to. Because it's like my second home. I can go to other countries after I graduate, but it's gonna be like starting all over again. And for them, it's a choice to go anywhere. And for me, it's a privilege to be in the US.
My home life is very contentious.
I mean, everyone needs to be on antidepressants, which, I mean, that's a whole other story. But, yes, everyone is very tense.
Over the summer, my mom took me to this golf driving range because she's super into golf now. And she was like, you know, let's go and it'll take your mind off of the things that you're anxious about. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go. And I started crying while hitting the golf balls. And she was like, oh my God, why are you crying? I don't know. I was just at the driving range like that.
At night, when I can't get through my readings because they're all like fucking pretentious academic words and it's not my native language and there are 42 pages of this bullshit. That's when I sink into the like imposter syndrome. I'm lonely as fuck and I'm depressed and no one ever is ever going to help me. And with my cultural background, therapy and mental health issues are super stigmatized. I remember my dad telling me once that if someone spots you going to a mental hospital, your social life will be dead from then on. My parents have that kind of mindset that's a little bit like less tolerant, more old school. To them, mental health is a thing in your head. It really isn't anything. Just push it away. It doesn't really exist. And you'll be all right. You know? You're crying over nothing. That kind of thing. They're giving me space because my dad gets really uncomfortable every time I start crying randomly.
There was one morning where I woke up really early to try and watch the sunrise because I was like, yes, that sounds like something a depressed person would do to feel joy in life again. And so I got up so early. I got up at like 4 a.m. and I went over to this hill near my house that faces east to watch the sunrise.
And it was so cloudy, you couldn't see a thing. And I was like, oh, perfect. You know, what a perfect metaphor. And some wild turkey started yelling at me. And that was the first person I talked to since I'd gone home.
My relationship between me and my parents is imperfect. My mom, I think, can be overbearing sometimes. And I've gradually tried to demonstrate more maturity and draw my line in terms of what I personally do for myself. She tends to, like, hover a little bit. Like, I think it's kind of natural thing. A lot of Asian parents, culturally, it's kind of natural.
Yeah, my mom would just ask, like, how was therapy? And I would be like, oh, it's good. But then she would give me a comment like, oh, if it's good, then you probably don't need to go anymore. Like, after one session. And I'm like, that's not how therapy works. Nice try.
My mom got remarried, and now he lives with us. I don't like him. He can get mad about things that 2 hours ago he was completely fine and excited for. And it's scary. I don't even feel comfortable in my own house. And now, this transition has been really hard. And obviously, having to stay in the house the entire time has just made it a lot harder. I have this complex where I feel the need to fix my family whenever I'm back because I love my family so much and I don't want to see them to be in any type of pain. So I'm like, okay, I'll try to make this as happy as possible. So I feel like I put that baggage on for myself to kind of fix the family and heal the family. So that was a lot for me.
Me and my dad, growing up with him wasn't the best. He was very angry and bitter and drank a lot. I feel like a lot of me was kind of latching on to the idea of having daddy issues as a personality trait. Like I was holding on to shit I shouldn't have just for the sake of having a story to tell. Like having this mysterious aura to me, like, oh, I have daddy issues, become my friend and find out why.
And when I'm interacting with my family, I tend to not feel like I deserve their love. So I don't open myself up or talk about what's going on with me or lean on them because I don't feel like deserving of it because of all the issues we've had.
When Corona happened, I was still in a relationship that started the year prior. I wanted to get out of that, but at the time I wasn't brave enough, didn't know how, and I was focused on school more than anything. I was just distracted over there, doing my own thing and kind of running away from it. But when Corona happened, it was spring break. I was in the Bay, but I wasn't staying at home. I was with my boyfriend at the time.
Quarantine has kind of forced me to see when I'm not doing all right and actually admit that I'm not doing all right because, you know, I used to have the option to just like overwhelm myself and take all these difficult classes and do this social stuff constantly so that I couldn't spend those moments alone with myself. But now most of my moments are me just like dealing with myself and just having to figure out how I'm doing.
When we were sent home for quarantine, I ended up moving in with him right then and there without really talking about the decision, without much planning. And I hadn't realized how bad the relationship was at the time. And it turned worse as all of my power and self-mobility and everything was suddenly gone. Like I didn't have a car, I had lost my job, and I was really depending on somebody I didn't want to depend on. And he held that power over me and definitely abused it over and over through verbal and emotional abuse, constantly gaslighting and getting angry at me for trying to connect with my friends online. And eventually just pushing me to a very, very low point where I no longer believed much in myself, where I was addicted to this person even though I knew they were harming me. It got really bad. It got really, really bad for a little bit where it was just really hopeless and painful. And you know, it just didn't feel worth it, all these bad thoughts and stuff. So I was living in an RV with a man I did not truly love, who did not truly love me, isolated and alone, couldn't get out. It sucked a lot. I have a close friend. Her name is Amber. She's a civil rights advocate and I've known her since middle school. She was going to the Black Lives Matter protest over the summer and something in me was like, I want to go with her. I've never done anything like this before and it's not really characteristic of me to do this, but something in me just snapped and I didn't want to feel stuck anymore. I lied to my boyfriend and said, I'm gonna hang out with this girl, but I'm actually going down to the protest. The first day I went, I saw a lot of anger, a lot of different views clashing. During that, I got tear gassed and Amber got maced right in the face. Like, I watched her cry a lot. At one point, there was someone threatening the protesters with a gun. Eventually, we all got on the highway, and I was one of them. Right there, standing on the highway with a bunch of strangers, looking at the police with their little rubber bullet guns, not feeling all that scared, being able to do something that had good in it. I was one part of it. From all of that, I realized something. I was able to stand up for other people, but I couldn't stand up for myself in a relationship. Something was wrong there, and I couldn't stay in that. I needed to get out as soon as possible, no matter what it took. And I tried multiple times after that. I even told him I went to the protest, and he got very, very aggressive when he found that out. Finally, at one point, I ran away to home. I ran away to home. I got out of the RV in a very strange way. The park is fenced off, and I ended up crawling under the fence and walking for a while and getting to a place where an Uber could pick me up, and I went home because I was done.
And then school started again, and I came back to USC very much healed from the whole summer. And I've actually gotten really close to my roommates because they saw me at my lowest point, my depressive spiral, doing all these drugs and sobbing over this falling out I had with M. And they still love me.
And I was a fucking mess. I was such a mess, and they stood by me. And it really changed the way I think about relationships, because for the longest time, I really thought you had to be perfect to warrant being loved and cared for.
You can't be flawed because then no one has any reason to love you. But that's so far from true. And people don't love you because you're perfect, they love you because you're not.
The week before school started, I just took a solo trip to the Mojave Desert. Just drove there in the middle of nowhere with absolutely no signals, all by myself. And that was such a liberating moment for me. I think that's probably my most symbolic experience of my year in quarantine. Realizing I am all alone, but embracing it and taking responsibility for being alone. Because when you're out there, you are completely cut off. Your survival's on yourself. I survived. I can come back in one piece. I did get lost at one point, but I came back in one piece. So yeah, that's been my quarantine mental health journey per se.
I was playing a game. I play games on my phone. It was something that was helping me with my woes. And so I'm playing this game, and I'm like trying to get all 3 stars in every level, and I realized I beat myself on the head. And I was like, oh my god, you have no willpower, you have no self-control, and it's a freaking game. And it's funny, because I realized I'm playing this game at 2 a.m. over break. And I kind of just have this moment of whoa, isn't this game supposed to be fun? Isn't that the fucking point? I don't know. I guess it's just a matter of catching the thoughts and slowly changing.
I'm more capable than I think. There is good in this world, and there is bad. And some people won't let you stand up. And that's not okay.
In the end, I picked up the bass guitar, and I've been working on it every single day. And even the way I'm playing it, and the way I'm holding it, and the music that I'm making, I see the growth in it. And oh my god, it's so exciting to see the growth in this instrument that I taught myself.
And the bass guitar it's powerful and deep and low. It's like a thundering instrument, and I don't know, I played in my room and I just feel so powerful.
In general, I'm just trying to have a new look. I guess I got a lot more comfortable with my face, and I got a lot more comfortable with my body. And I think I'm finally starting to allow myself to have this sort of hot girl attitude. You know, like if they don't respond, that is their loss. You know, like I don't know. I loosened up a lot, and I like myself being loose and spontaneous. You know, because 8 months ago, I did not have very much self-confidence versus like at the end of last semester, I did have confidence that I was really proud of.
I'm less ashamed of being in therapy now. It's been kind of nice during quarantine. I feel like there's an anonymity to it all. And I also think I've just changed a lot in general over the past year, you know? I feel more confident in myself as a leader, as a son, as a brother, as a friend.
My family had a big talk one day, and my father, you know, he kind of broke down. And I immediately broke down because it was so rare to see. And I think the biggest thing that we tried to learn as a family was like listening. I think that's something that we all were just not doing. Like nobody was listening to each other. But right now, I think I'm doing a much better job at opening myself up more and sharing parts of myself without the regret, without the fear that they will reject it.
So me and my dad agreed to meet up in person and talk about things, like over lunch or something, just talk about things in a peaceful way. By the end, I was like, I forgive you, dude. And he was like, cool. And then we cried, you know? I think I just realized that we're all living on borrowed time, and I think we always have been, which made me realize I don't want this weird, ugly relationship with my dad just kind of always looming over me.
I love that I value compassion and empathy. That sounds dumb. No. I stand by it. I'm gonna stand by it. I think those are really important things. And obviously, I'm not as compassionate and empathetic as I could be. But I think I still do a good job at extending my empathy and compassion to others as much as I can.
There have been times when people have literally spontaneously combusted, and it's rare, but it happens. And so yeah, I think like if I were to spontaneously combust right now, would I be satisfied with the life I've lived?
I deleted all my social media, and I've just been focusing on myself at this point and being like, let me love myself first. Let me try to see my own beauty first.
I feel like a completely different person. Like, I look at pictures and videos that I took at the beginning of quarantine, and I'm like, who was that?
So the depressive spiral was worth it, I guess. I'm so much more comfortable with the person that I am now. Because before I was honestly just writing off the fact that I'm really crazy. But now I'm fun and crazy, and it doesn't have to define me. Now I'm also someone that I can like.
I know myself a little bit better. And now I can start trying to make real changes to my life.
I'm a little bit more comfortable with the person I am.
I think I love myself a lot more. I have so much more self-worth.
Yeah, so that's how the pandemic's changed me. That was a lot.